Here are the top officials in the Trump White House who have left. Below are the top White House officials who resigned, or were fired, dismissed or reassigned. Mr. Trump also fired James B. Comey as director of the FBI, and Sally Q. Yates, a holdover from the Obama administration who was serving as his acting attorney general. Stephen K. Bannon, chief strategist. Mr. Trump told aides he had decided to remove Mr. Bannon, a right-wing nationalist who has clashed with other senior White House advisors and members of Mr. Trump's family, but a person close to Mr. Bannon said that he had submitted his resignation to the president on August 7. Mike Dubke, communications director. Mr. Dubke told colleagues that the reasons for his resignation were personal. Michael T. Flynn, national security advisor. Mr. Trump asked Mr. Flynn for his resignation more than 2 weeks after he was told that Mr. Flynn had lied to the vice president and was vulnerable to blackmail by Russians. K.T. McFarland, deputy national security advisor. Ms. McFarland, who was brought to the White House by Mr. Flynn, was named ambassador to Singapore in mid-May. Reince Priebus, chief of staff. Mr. Priebus was pushed out, tendering his resignation after Mr. Trump told Mr. Priebus he wanted to make a change and offered the job to John Kelly. Anthony Scaramucci, communications director. He was fired by Mr. Kelly days after a vulgarity-laced telephone call with a New Yorker reporter was made public. Sean Spicer, press secretary, communications director. Mr. Spicer resigned, telling Mr. Trump that he disagreed with Mr. Trump's hiring of Mr. Scaramucci as communications director. Katie Walsh, deputy chief of staff. Ms. Walsh was forced out by Jared Kushner and other West Wing officials. She joined the pro-Trump outside group America First Policies. Ezra Cohen-Watnick, senior director for intelligence, national. Mr. Cohen-Watnick was appointed by Mr. Flynn. He was pushed out by Lieutenant Gen. H.R. McMaster, who succeeded Mr. Flynn. Tara Dahl, deputy chief of staff, NSC, a former writer for Breitbart News who was appointed by Mr. Flynn. Ms. Dahl left the White House for a post at the United States Agency for International Development. Derek Harvey, Middle East advisor, NSC. No explanation was given for his exit, but Mr. Harvey was appointed by Mr. Flynn and was widely reported to have been at odds with Mr. McMaster. Rich Higgins, director in the Strategic Planning Office, NSC. Mr. Higgins was forced out after writing a memo arguing that Mr. Trump was being subverted by an array of foreign and domestic enemies, including globalists and officials of the deep state. Michael C. Short, senior assistant press secretary. Mr. Short, who had been close to Mr. Spicer, resigned shortly after Mr. Scaramucci confirmed to reporters that he was planning to fire Mr. Short.